Hello and welcome to a brand new road trip special 30-minute time limit. My name's Mac Davis and I'm your host for a special that will include the movers and shakers of professional wrestling and sports entertainment. Our very first guest happens to be a host of the wildly popular Busted Open radio show on SiriusXM. His name, Dave Lagreca. Let's talk about where you're from. I know you're born and raised in New Jersey, right?
That's right, New Jersey. Thank you.
Yeah.
Earlier you were saying Jersey. I'm glad you're saying New Jersey because only people from New Jersey can say Jersey. So I'm glad you're using the respect for the state like you are. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I still live in New Jersey.
Now, as a kid, did your father take you to wrestling matches? Or
He did. And if you remember back in the day, like, they would have the big shows in the arena, but they would have, like, the smaller, like, even the WWF, they would have little house shows around in, like, smaller, like, community colleges and ice rinks and things like that. So I would go to William Patterson College, which fit maybe, 400 or 500 people. And then I would go to the big shows at the Meadowlands, which opened around 1981, which held 20,000 people. So, if you were going to a WWF show, you saw Hogan at the Meadowlands, and then you would see, Billy Jack Haynes and things, in the smaller places. So my dad used to take me to all the wrestling shows, not just the WWF, but at the time, there was an organization called Pro Wrestling USA, which was a combination of the NWA and AWA. So being in Jersey, I was able to, see Hogan defend the WWF title, but see Flair defend the NWA championship and see Rick Martel defend the AWA championship.
let me ask you, I've always been curious, because you're from up north and I'm from the south, so obviously I grew up with WCW, NWA, Mid-Atlantic, all those type of things. What did you watch when you grew up? Did you get to see that kind of shows prior to the Superstation coming along?
Well, I'll tell you my story. I was by my buddy's house. I want to say it was around 1982. I was at my buddy's house, and I was 11 years old, and he was watching wrestling, and I had never watched wrestling before. So he asked me if I was a wrestling fan. I said, no, I'd never watched it. Is that like with Bob Backlund? And he goes, no, that's the WWF. That's fake. Yep. You need to watch the NWA. And he goes, that's real. So I sat down, I watched an episode of Georgia Championship Wrestling. I always say, like, the first thing I ever saw was Gordon Soley interviewing Tommy Rich. And then they go to break, and then coming back, it was Gordon Soley interviewing Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. And I was, like, captivated by it. So for a good 6-month period, I just watched Georgia Championship Wrestling on Saturdays on TBS. And then I discovered the wrestling magazines, the Apter mags, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, Inside Wrestling. And that's when I kind of found out that there was this whole world outside of just that 1-hour show that I was watching on WTBS. And it was really Superfly Snuka against Bob Backlund. In Pro Wrestling Illustrated, they had a picture of Snuka on top of the cage and Bob Backlund. And I was like, wait a second. This looks real to me. So then that's when I started watching WWF.
It's funny because down south, we always thought the same thing that you were told. We were always told that the wrestling up north is comic book stuff. It's not that good. Don't watch it. Don't waste your time. Even though they had Bruno Sammartino, way back at that time. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, there's some big names at that point, but we never saw the WWF at that point as a real organization. We thought they were just kind of junky, where we thought the NWA and WCW, they ruled everything. And so it's kind of cool to hear that somebody from up north kind of had the same experience through somebody else.
I felt exactly the same way. And then once I started discovering everything, I kind of liked it for what it was. Like, I still looked at NWA, even to today. Like, if you listen to Busted Open, I talk so highly about the NWA. There's just something about those 3 letters that just scream pro wrestling to me. But I was always a big NWA fan. And for a while, I didn't even watch WWF. It was NWA, it was AWA, and then because of cable TV, you were able to watch everything. So,
did when you went to school, and I know this is common with a lot of folks who like wrestling, were you made fun of for being a wrestling fan?
I sure was. You took a beating when you're a wrestling fan until WrestleMania 3. When 1987 came along and WrestleMania 3 hit and it was mainstream, then everybody wanted to be my friend. Everybody wanted to ask me about pro wrestling. But I would bring in the wrestling magazines, and I would be made fun of. And there was always my kind of clique of friends that appreciated it, but the majority of people didn't get it until 1987.
Well, what about now? Being an adult and being a wrestling fan, I know because you host a radio show, maybe they look at you a little bit differently, but just as a fan, as an adult, do you find that other people still look at you kind of sideways?
Always. Here at SiriusXM, like now, they're finally acknowledging the show. Why? Because it's making money. It's a hit, but it was a struggle just to get this show on the air. And then for years, and I did the show with Doug Mortman. For years, we did this show, and it kind of just flew under the radar because nobody really accepted it because it was pro wrestling. But now you're starting to feel that it's becoming a mainstream thing again. So now you're kind of getting the acknowledgement. But I still get it, and I'm sure you do too.
Oh, I do.
You still get the the tilt and what wrestling? I thought you were a sports guy because I worked for the NFL.
Yep.
So I always get that. I always get what? I thought you were a sports guy. I didn't know you were a wrestling guy.
Try telling somebody you're a wrestler as an adult.
I can imagine.
That is, I get a lot of people who look at me like, oh, so you're one of those types. Yeah,
but still, if you say, I'm a professional wrestler, they're like, oh, you're a professional. But when you say you cover pro wrestling, that's kind of like, they kind of look at you a little.
You're one of the nerdy guys that goes around.
Put my glasses on.
Oh, yeah, I got mine over here.
But definitely.
You had mentioned brothers and sisters to me at one time. I know you got a brother who works. Does he work for SiriusXM?
No, he does afternoon drive on ESPN in New York.
Does he listen to your show?
He does not listen to my show.
That's a shame.
It's a damn shame, and it's something I give him a lot of heat for because I listen to his show, and he doesn't listen to my show. And it's always the same excuse. I'm not a wrestling guy. I don't get what you're talking about. But you'd think just out of brotherly love.
Oh, yeah. So as you grew up, he never enjoyed wrestling with you?
No. As a matter, and listen, we're very, very close. I don't want you to get the wrong idea, but July 15th, 1984.
Well, you remember that date well.
I remember the date well for a couple of different reasons. One, it's my birthday. July 15th is my birthday. And the day before was July 14th, 1984. And I don't know if that date hits you in any way, but that was Black Saturday.
Ooh.
That was when the WWF took over TBS. Yep. And instead of seeing Gordon Soley, you saw Freddie Miller introducing Vince McMahon. Another reason I hate the WWF, by the way. But July 15th was my birthday, and my parents took us to the Meadowlands to see wrestling. And my brother, a big sports fan, that was also the day of the USFL championship game. So, he had to go kicking and screaming. And to this day, he talks about how he missed that USFL championship game, which turned out to be the last USFL championship game. So he missed that because of going to wrestling for my birthday.
I know that he had made a comment. He had a show, and I saw a video somewhere where he talked about your wedding, and that your mom was there, and your mom was all beside herself because she was at a wrestling event or something like that, and that eventually, I guess your mom found herself enjoying the wedding. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me what made you want to get in there? First of all, I know in radio, it's hard enough to keep a marriage well.
This is my third marriage.
There you go.
So, yes.
So in radio, it's tough. Wrestling, it's tough. So you double whammied right there. You got wrestling and you got radio in your background. But now you're married to a beautiful woman, nice lady.
Violetta, yeah.
Violetta. And I know that you got married in a wrestling ring. How did you talk her into doing that?
All right. It's not even that we just got married in a wrestling ring. We actually had a wrestling match in between dinner and dessert at the wedding.
Well, that's okay. I can see that being fun.
It was actually fun. So I'll tell you exactly why. Obviously, pro wrestling has become my life, like it is yours. Yes. It kind of dominates everything you do. Violetta had an image of what she wanted the ceremony to look like and what she wanted the reception to look like, from the lights and the decorations and everything. And my buddy Kevin Knight has a wrestling school called the IWF Wrestling School in West Patterson. So when she was looking at pictures and she was kind of coming up for the scheme of the wrestling, she goes, hey, do you think Kevin would let us rent out his wrestling school for the day because the size is perfect and everything else? So I asked him, he said, sure, you can rent it out, which we did. And he said, hey, by the way, the wrestling ring is there. If you want, why don't we use the wrestling ring as the altar when you get married? And sure, why not? And then it's like, hey, well, by the way, if you're going to be using the ring, why not have a wrestling match at during the reception? So that's exactly what we did.
And she was okay with it.
She was definitely okay with it. Yeah, it's a great story to tell, and it made it so unique. So yeah,
Violetta, we were just talking about. You talk about her quite a bit on the radio. My experience in the radio, because I was on the radio, as you know, many times in my previous marriage, I would talk about my wife all the time. It's just a habit. You know, if you're really, to me, if you're a good broadcaster, good radio person, you're going to come in and you're going to talk about life. You're going to talk about what happened to you, what happened at the house, because that's what you're there for. Some women like that, some don't. Obviously, Violetta has no problem.
Well, it's funny because she is a very, very private person. She's, you know, she has her small group of friends. She's very private in that way. So she's definitely not somebody that's craving attention or wanting attention. But you're right. When you do a wrestling show, especially, or any kind of radio show, 5 days a week for 3 hours, you're going to incorporate your real life. You have to.
Yes.
And our fans, the Busted Open Nation, is almost like family to me. They're friends. You know, they're somebody that I talk to now for over 10 years. So, of course, your real life is going to bleed in. And also for me, myself, I'm not one of those people that has an ego about them. Like, I'm not going to just come on the air to make myself look good, or it's not a power trip. It's not an ego trip. So I'll make fun of myself. So if something bad happens, I'll talk about it on the air. Like, believe me, Violetta always comes out looking like the hero. And I'm always the one that's looking like the scrub. So I have no problem doing that. And she has fun with it on social media. She buys into the tweets and everything at our live remotes. As you know, like at our 10-year anniversary party, she's a part. She, you know, the whole pierogi thing. She made pierogies, so like she's in it. You know, she knows that this is a huge part of my life, and because she is my life right now, she's in it, whether she likes it or not. Yeah.
So she's stuck now.
That's it. Man, that's it.
You also worked with the NHL.
I worked for the National Hockey League. Yep, absolutely. I did that before I came to work for SiriusXM.
And once you came here, that was NFL at that point?
I worked 13 years for the NFL.
And what were you doing at that point?
I was the morning show producer.
Oh, so you were actually on the other end of what you're doing now.
Yep, I was at the other end, and going to all the Super Bowls. I went to pretty much every Super Bowl from 2004 to 2014.
What made you get into your own show versus staying with the NFL?
Well, because wrestling's always been a passion of mine. And Doug Mortman, who I did the show with originally, we said, hey, you know, Sirius, and at the time it was before the merger, Sirius is perfect platform for wrestling. It's completely geared towards that audience. It's, you know, it's a niche audience. It's a hardcore audience. This would be perfect. And we pitched it, and it took a long time, but finally they accepted it. And it was just kind of like a side gig. It was never meant to be full time. And it started off a day, then 2 days, and then 3 days. And then finally, because of the popularity of the show, they moved it over to 5 days. And then NFL took a back seat, and then no seat at all. And now it's just all about Busted Open.
You've got some great co-hosts on Busted Open.
Yep, very lucky.
You've got Bully Ray. Mm-hmm. Tell me about Bully Ray. Was he the first guest host you had come in?
Yeah, Bully would be the first. Bully and I he was always a guest on our show, always appreciated the show, always respected Doug and I and our views, because we would never dig up dirt, and we would never just be completely negative. So he kind of respected that and liked it, and he was a frequent guest on the show, and we started conversing. It was actually the Okada Omega match from Wrestle Kingdom. I came on the air and I said that I thought it was the best match since Flair Steamboat in 1989. And Bully didn't agree. And we actually had a conversation off air. This wasn't even on air. This is over the phone. And I knew Doug was leaving the show, because Doug is a VP here at SiriusXM. So I knew that he wasn't going to be a part of the show any longer. And we needed to get another host. And that's when I said, hey, is radio something you'd like to do? And based off of that conversation, it clicked, it worked, and yeah, he was kind of like the guy who broke the ice.
It's good. I like his talent on the air against yours, mainly because he's the The Hellraiser. He tries to stir stuff up, and you try to calm it down.
Yeah, and we have good chemistry, I think, on
You
the
do.
air, and we kind of know now our cadence, and I think it flows really well. And yeah, he is the bully, and at first I didn't, step up to the bully. Now I have no problem doing it, but he has no problem knocking me down either. So I think it's a
He's
good
still going to be
dynamic.
bully.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
How about Tommy Dreamer? When did he come along?
Well, Tommy is somebody who is also a frequent guest. And, Tommy was interested in radio, and not so much with Busted Open. He wanted to get into radio, fantasy football. He's a big-time sports fan. And he actually started dabbling into the fantasy sports channel here before even being a part of Busted Open. And he was so good, I needed to make him a part of the show. And now he has a permanent day once a week, and I couldn't be happier.
Mark Henry.
Now, Mark is somebody I've been talking to for a long time. Mark was our first guest here on Busted Open 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. Yeah,
wow.
The first ever show. It was Prince Nana and Mark Henry were our first two guests here on their first ever show on Busted Open. And it was the WrestleMania in Dallas, so WrestleMania 31. No, that would be WrestleMania 32. I'm sorry. WrestleMania 32, him and I actually had the first serious conversation about him being a part. And it took a little bit, but now he is, and I'm glad he is. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. He's probably one of the nicest men I know.
I was about to say, he is one of the guys on your show that you listen to, and he sounds sincere, very nice, always wanting to help make things better.
Yep, and he does.
What are some of your favorite memories from Busted Open? Do you have any? Because I know in wrestling, people ask me that all the time, and you try to pick out a match, and like, that's just too difficult. Truth is, though, there are one or two I can pull out if I have to. Is there a memory from Busted Open that really sticks with you?
There's two. There's you were at our 10-year anniversary party. That was really us kind of just like showing SiriusXM that, hey, you know what, look at this. And I'll never forget, I was actually staying at a hotel that day, a couple of blocks away from where we were going to have the show. So it's like maybe an hour and a half before airtime. I turned the corner to go on the street where the bar was, and I see a line. And I was like, what is this line for? And I remember asking somebody, what's going on here? I was like, I hope this isn't going to interfere with our show because, there's this line, and it was the line to get in to our show.
I actually remember that moment because you tweeted or did something at that point. I remember seeing it online when I was at the convention hall, and I thought, oh, he's going to be in a great mood today.
Yeah, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like, wow. And we had so many people. We had over 600 people at the show, and the owner of the bar was afraid that he was going to have to shut down the show because there was so many. They had to turn people away because there's just too many people, and it was that was just a memory that will stick with me forever. That was just kind of like our validation.
Was that probably the peak, do you think? I don't want to say the peak, but up to that point, was that the peak of Busted Open?
Yeah, without a doubt. And there had been changes on the show, and you never know if people are going to stick with you, and because we moved times and moved days so many times. And you really don't know, because when you're doing your show, you're not doing it in front of an audience.
Right.
When you're wrestling a match, you know the reaction because you can hear the crowd.
Right.
We don't know. So that was kind of the validation of like, hey, this is popular, people like this, and this is something that I know that is going to be around for a long time. That was definitely probably the biggest memory. Another memory that really sticks in my head is WrestleMania 29, because it was in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. But not only that, WWE every year has kind of like a radio row where it's the Friday morning before WrestleMania. They have a lot of the WWE superstars where media can interview.
Right.
So Busted Open was a part of Radio Row that year, and it was at the Meadowlands Arena, the old Brendan Byrne Arena where my dad used to take me. So I'm doing it, and I'm looking at. And they've now closed that arena down, which is heartbreaking. But that arena didn't really change all that much from when I went there as a kid. So I was looking around that arena. I can pinpoint, where me and my dad sat, the matches we saw. And one of the guests that day was Sergeant Slaughter. And I saw him wrestle Ric Flair for the NWA Championship back in 1985.
Wow.
And in the interview, I mentioned the Sergeant Slaughter. I pointed to the exact section where my dad and I sat. And right where I said, we were sitting in that row and those seats, and he actually got teary-eyed talking about it with me.
Wow.
And it was like, just to be able to do that, like I'm doing a wrestling show, I'm interviewing Sergeant Slaughter in an arena that my dad used to take me, where I saw him wrestle against Ric Flair, who's my all-time favorite wrestler. Like, it can't get any better than that. So those two memories stick out more than any other.
And another memory that I think is something to point out is that the memory of you and your father going to the matches. That's one thing I think that people fail to see about wrestling. It is a big family thing. I mean, you talk to anybody, my dad, my grandfather, whoever, we went to the shows together. That's what they did. So to me and to a wrestling fan, that is wrestling. It's our family. The wrestlers are our family. The fans are our family.
Yep.
It's just how it is. Let me ask you, I'm curious, with everything that's going on now, you have the new organizations out there. You got AEW, you got ROH, you got New Japan Pro Wrestling. With everything that's going on right now, what's right with wrestling?
Well, I think the best thing about pro wrestling right now is that you're getting what you've always wanted. Like, there's options now. So I think with social media, it kind of breeds negativity a lot.
It does.
But to me, this is the best time to be a pro wrestling fan. This is the closest, and maybe even some would believe better than the era that I grew up in with the territories, because I couldn't go to Florida Championship Wrestling unless I went to Florida. I couldn't go to Georgia Championship Wrestling unless I went to Georgia. I couldn't go to World Class until I go to Dallas. Like now here, AEW eventually will come to this area. I was able to watch Ring of Honor in New Japan at the Garden.
This past year is what you're talking about. Right? Incredible show.
Incredible show.
I don't know if you're a little bored of hearing or not, but you got 20,000 people in Madison Square Garden who want to see me kick your mother trucking ass!
In the WWE, wrestling every year in stadiums, it's just like things you never would imagine, 30, 35, 40 years ago. I mean, they had it in stadiums, but you never saw 75, 80, 100,000 people at a show. So, to me, that's what's right about wrestling, is that you have options again. And, for a long time, the WWE dominated, and that was the only thing you could watch. And I'm not hating on the WWE, because I love the WWE. But now you have options. And to me, if you're a wrestling fan, enjoy that. Like, Monday is going to be different than Tuesday, and Tuesday is going to be different than Wednesday, and Wednesday is going to be different than Friday.
It's a different flavor every day.
Yeah, and I think that's something to be excited about if you're a wrestling fan.
Let me ask you then, on the other side, what's wrong with wrestling?
I think what's wrong with wrestling is that I feel that fans need to pick a side. And you don't. You don't need to pick a side. Now, you can like something more than another, and you can complain. You can watch a Monday Night Raw and say, you know what, that was a terrible show. That's fine. We do that on Busted Open. You can like AEW better than NXT or NXT more than AEW. That's fine. But I don't think you need to pick a side. Enjoy everything. So I think that's what wrestling fans really need to accept, and why not accept it? You don't need to pick a side.
No, I don't think so either. And I go back to the Monday Night Wars versus the Wednesday Night Wars. Is there a difference between the two? Because back when Monday Night Wars were taking place, everybody loved wrestling. Now you have the Wednesday Night Wars taking place, and people seem very split. They're either WWE or they're AEW. And like you say, there's a lot of flavors out there. Enjoy all of it.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing now is social media. I think if you had social media back then, you might see the same thing that we're seeing right now. And to me, it's like, all right, if I'm watching AEW, I'm DVRing NXT. If I'm watching NXT, I'm DVRing AEW. Eventually, I'm going to watch both, just like during the Monday Night Wars. I was a WCW guy, but I still watch the WWF.
Oh, yeah.
Now I watch WCW live. But as soon as that show was over, or the next day after school, I was watching WCW. That's all that really matters, is that you're watching everything.
That was my same pattern, as a matter of fact. I watched WCW and go back and watch the tapes Monday Night Raw. At that point, we had VCRs taking place at that point.
Yeah, and I was in college then, and so right after, actually, the heat of it, I was already out of school. I graduated from college in '95, so by that time I was already married and had a home. So I found a way to watch both.
Let me ask you a question, and I'm curious on your viewpoint. One of my fears with social media and the current Wednesday night war type of things that are taking place is that if we don't support people like AEW who are trying to go out there and do their shows, they may fade away.
Yes.
And if they fade away, what stops the WWE from going back to that same old boring comic book stuff that they were doing before? I think that's part of what the problem was, is that they weren't getting pushed. And Vince will tell you in a heartbeat, he's better when he's got competition. But when he eats his competition up, he goes back to doing the same old safe stuff, which means that our wrestling with the edge will go away and back to that area because it's a business. They're running a business, and AEW's running a business as well, but they're trying to run their business with a little more edge than what WWE used to do. Is there? I mean, do you see a problem if we lose AEW? Do you see WWE going back?
Yes, I do. And that's why I get so frustrated from people that say they don't watch AEW. Support AEW, because we didn't get here in the States, when All In sold out and had 10,000 people, we hadn't seen that in 20 years. Like, think about that. Yep. Now we're used to seeing it every week because when you put on AEW Dynamite, you see that. But for a long time, we didn't have that. Nope. Even, Impact Wrestling. Impact Wrestling was doing really good ratings on Spike, but they didn't draw more. I mean, I think their biggest house was about 7,000 people. So embrace it, because even if it's not your favorite, watch it just to support it. Because like you said, I guarantee you the WWE is going to go back to that safe place if they're winning. Competition, that's going to bring out the best in that company. And when is the WWE best? Like you said, when it has competition. So for that reason alone, if you're a WWE fan, you want to support AEW.
Title belts. Let me ask you about a title belt. The Fiend on WWE with his new $6,500 title belt. Yeah. Do you? I guess maybe I'm a little bit more old school. I prefer to see the title come out and not all the different titles, like the Stone Cold title, all those different things. To me, the NWA made a point when they came back. Their title meant something. It was history. There was legacy to that title. If you keep changing titles, does that hurt the title's prominence, I guess?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. You're right. We grew up with that 10 pounds of gold, that NWA World Heavyweight Championship, so that title meant everything. You're seeing that with Nick Aldis right now with the NWA, the way he holds that belt. He doesn't just sling it over his shoulder or just, drag it on the ground. He wears it around his waist, or he holds it like he's holding a porcelain doll. I like that. I respect that. With the WWE, the titles don't mean as much. We know that. I mean, we've kind of become adjusted to that. I still think that every story should lead to a championship. I think every championship should mean something. But again, I think it goes back to the variety of wrestling that we're watching. Do you want the WWE to have that same respect for the title like the NWA? Maybe that would make it more like the NWA. So the fact that their titles are different and the standing is different, I think just that's that product. But for me, yes, you're absolutely right. I wish they had a little bit more respect to their title holders.
A new 3-year contract with SiriusXM.
1, 2, 3, yes.
So you got 3 more years. What are the plans in the next 3 years?
To make this bigger and better. I'm always, and I've already got some things in the works that I think the fans will really enjoy. I think we got a great cast, a great staff. I'm not looking to make any changes when it comes to that. I think Tommy, Mark, and Bully are fantastic at what they do. But look, we made a change now we are 6 days a week. We're not 5 days a week anymore. I never even expected that. I never even thought of that. And now we're on 6 days a week, and I'm not even involved in that Saturday show.
Do they come to you for that Saturday show to make sure you're okay with it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I Marissa Reeves, who's the head of the channel, Fight Nation, of course. When it comes to this show, she has the respect and knows how important that it is. She would never do anything or make any kind of decisions that that she wouldn't at least get my okay, or at least talk to me about it. So that's why she's an amazing boss, because she has the respect for me and the respect for the show. But you'll see, we're coming up with things and coming up with ideas, especially, our 10-year anniversary party was big. WrestleMania in Tampa, we're looking to make that party even bigger than our 10-year.
I was going to ask you about that. I'll be in Tampa, so I was hoping you're going to have an 11th anniversary party down there.
Yeah, we got some plans. I can't tell you what it is, but we got some plans.
Let's talk about some of the supporting players on Busted Open. You got Alex and Gabby. Tell me a little bit about each one of those two.
First of all, I couldn't ask for a better cast around me. And one thing that was a mission for me is I wanted this to be like the Howard Stern Show. I want it to be like everyone who works on this show is a player and is a character and is a personality. A lot of radio shows don't do that. Their behind the scenes people are just that, behind the scenes. I don't want that. And I don't think anybody else connected with the show wants that either. I want Alex Metz to be known as the producer of the show because, I want him to be acknowledged for it because he does a great job. Gabby does a tremendous job. And you know what? Alex is very good with his opinions. And Gabby, not a wrestling fan. She's new to the wrestling world. And I like the fact that she's growing with her knowledge of pro wrestling. I love that. I want people to understand that. And, anyway, look at what we're getting with Shelton Benjamin. Shelton Benjamin comes on the air, proposes to Gabby. Why not?
Shelton, you're going to have to fight me for Gabby. I can tell you that right now.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. But that they're very, very important to me and very important to the success of the show.
Your family life. You've got kids, don't you? I mean, so you...
I have a stepdaughter, Sarah, and I have my daughter, Abigail.
So you stay pretty busy with the kids. Are they still teenage high school kids?
Abigail is 16. She's in high school, which is tough.
I feel sorry for you.
Ooh, it's rough. And then my stepdaughter, Sarah, is actually in a trade school right now. She's in a broadcasting school right now. So she's finished with college. She's doing broadcasting school, and she's looking to get into this. So, I don't want to be an influence, but at the same time, why not be an influence, So she's not a sports fan. She's not a wrestling fan. My daughter is a wrestling fan. She's a huge Marty Scurll fan. She loves Crazy Steve. Like she's a big time wrestling fan. So that's something that we have a joy and a passion for, which is great.
I also one last question. I know that you know Bill Apter.
I love Bill Apter.
Yeah, tell me any stories about Bill Apter that you can remember that.
Yeah, I actually do have one. It says, and I look at Bill Apter. Now, Bill Apter didn't know me when I started getting into radio or even when I started the show, but I look at him as kind of a mentor. When I was a kid, I didn't want to be a pro wrestler. I wanted to be Bill Apter. I wanted to write for a wrestling magazine. That's what I would dream about. That's what I really wanted to do. And I remember seeing him and George Napolitano, and taking pictures outside the ring. And I have Polaroid pictures that I took of Bill Apter as he's taking pictures because to me, he was just as big a superstar as anybody that was in the ring wrestling. George too. What an amazing photographer, So I wanted to be Bill Apter, and I finally got to meet Bill Apter for the first time. It was WrestleMania 28 in Miami. And we actually, and Doug Mortman, who was my co-host at the time, was driving, and we gave him a ride from the stadium back to the hotel. And my broadcast partner, Doug, was driving like a maniac. And Bill Apter was just like, hey, maybe you want to slow down. So that's probably and just seeing Bill Apter interact with Road Warrior Animal and seeing, as he should, getting that acknowledgement of being a legend in this business. So, yeah.
Do you feel like he belongs in the Hall of Fame?
Bill Apter, absolutely.
It's funny because I'm surprised he hasn't been put in there yet. And there's anybody from those days who knows the history of wrestling and has spoken with, talked with, whatever, with so many of the legends. I'm surprised he hasn't been entered yet, and he doesn't see himself going in. He doesn't think that'll ever happen.
I think that's a shame. And,
I think it is too.
Even watching those old, the Lords of the Ring. I don't know if you remember that VHS tape.
Yep.
That was, seeing Bill Apter with Gordon Solie. That just seemed natural to me. Yes. And as important as any of those shows were, so were those magazines. Pro Wrestling Illustrated, The Wrestler, Inside Wrestling, Sports Review Wrestling, all under that, Apter Mag umbrella. Yes, and I even look at George, with Main Event magazine and Wrestling. Those magazines were my childhood.
Yes.
Those were. you know, those were how you found out everything that was going on in the
Because we
world of
didn't
wrestling.
have the social media.
No, we didn't have social
magazines
media, and
was
they,
it.
they didn't talk about it in any other magazine, Sports Illustrated or anything like that.
And in fact, the magazines were running stories that were well behind where they actually were, because the magazines would get printed out. About a month later, I guess it was, something like that. So you never got up to the minute news like what we can do now. Now you can go onto SiriusXM and tune into you and get the information immediately.
And that's why wrestling right now is such an immediate, like, you know, the day after WrestleMania, you're not even talking about WrestleMania anymore. You're talking about the Raw that's taking place after WrestleMania. Those magazines documented everything, you know. I'm a big collector of wrestling magazines. Even now, there's still a couple of wrestling magazines that are surviving. And I subscribe to them because they still mean something to me. I have boxes and boxes of those old wrestling magazines. As a matter of fact, if you go into my bag right now, I'll make you open it up. I'll open it up right in front of you, because just to show you that I'm not bullshitting.
Well, I know if you had Tommy here today, you probably had to have a magazine with you.
Well, I always do. Okay, there you go. I got Pro Wrestling Illustrated, you know, achievements from 1984, and I got I just mentioned it before. I got the Wrestler mag. I carry these around, especially with knowing that Tommy's going to work with me. He'll be disappointed if I don't bring him in. So every time I work with Tommy, I bring in a new magazine.
Do you have a magazine cover that sticks out in your mind? One that you're like, oh, this is the one I'm going to put in a frame or something. You know?
Yes, Sports Review Wrestling, The Last Battle of Atlanta, Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer.
My thanks to Dave Lagreca for taking the time to sit in front of our cameras and do this interview. I do want to mention, however, that I didn't stop the interview there. I've always believed that there are two sides to every person. The side that we see ourselves and how others see us. So with that in mind, I decided to ask the rest of the Busted Open crew, who is the real Dave Lagreca?
And as you all know, I am married to Dave Lagreca, who's a host of Busted Open on SiriusXM. And let me tell you, it's crazy being to Dave Lagreca. I mean, basically everything that Dave does is wrestling related. We actually got married in a wrestling ring, and Dave is, I think somebody said that once about him, and I think it can actually be, I'm pretty sure it's Peter Rosenberg who said that he's a wrestling historian, and I actually agree with that, because he spent so much time watching wrestling, researching wrestling, talking about wrestling, taking wrestling related phone calls, and basically his whole life is wrestling. And I don't know if that's unfortunate or fortunate for me, but I just I grew to love it. And the whole, you know, story, everything that's happening on the radio every day, and how popular the show is, how crazy the show is, how much of our own life story goes into that show. That's just amazing. I never expected this in my most wild dreams to actually live through. Once in a while, he will do something nice for me. Like, for example, he will take me to some botanical gardens in Pennsylvania, and on the way there we'll listen to, you know, all different wrestling podcasts for 2.5 hours, and on the way back we'll do the same thing. While there, he will take me to some Swiss restaurant for some fondue, and probably on Valentine's Day he'll give me chocolate covered Ricolas as a gift. But I just grew to love it. We have so much fun. Like, we're actually enjoying each other's company, and I enjoy going to all those crazy wrestling shows and signing chairs occasionally and signing autographs. I'm actually counting them. I think I'm at number 12 or 13 right now. That's how many I've signed. But living with Dave is exactly what you see on the radio. It's one crazy ride.
What's going on, guys? I think y'all want to know who is the real Dave Lagreca. Dave fancies himself a smart man, a kind man, a sweet man. Bully Ray would paint Dave as somebody that won't make a decision. Well, Mark Henry, he describes Dave Lagreca as a fun-loving, junior high acting human being with a lot of love for pro wrestling. But in a nutshell, David Lagreca is the Gilbert Gottfried of pro wrestling. That, my friends, is who Dave Lagreca is.
Who is the real Dave Lagreca? You see, on the air, you know him as this diehard wrestling fan. You know him as this loving husband and father. But we here at Busted Open know Dave as an egotistical. He always promotes his big heads. He always loves talking about himself. Hell, he's not even Italian, he's Swiss. Nobody knows the real Dave Lagreca.
I know I got a bunch of people here. Maybe they know who he is. Dave? No. Let's see if my company knows. Bill Mac wants a tape on who? Dave Lowe. I think one time I think that's some guy that I once busted open. Yeah, that's what name do you work under? I don't know who the hell he is. Oh, I don't know. Does he have, with his name, he have something maybe to do with la Greco-Roman wrestling? Lucha Libre? I don't know. But what? Busted up one? No, I don't know. Who the... I have no idea. Who is that, Bill? Hey, come on, we gotta have dinner. Just turn this freaking thing off. We don't know who this, Greg who? Don't know who the hell he is, all right? Cut this off. We want to go have dinner now, all right? I'm getting tired of this, all right? Sorry, Mac. We're going to dinner. None of us can help you. We don't know who this Gregory guy is. Is it Spanish, like food or something? Lagreca? Or Greek food? Or we just don't have time to do this right now. Everybody's hungry. Come on, guys.
All right, here we go. The Bully Ray top 5 power rankings when it comes to who is the real Dave Lagreca. Number 5. The real Dave Lagreca is Swiss. He's a fraud. He's been saying he's Italian for the longest time, but he's not. He just did this DNA test, and he found out he's Swiss. You're Swiss? Oh my God, poor Violetta. She thought she was marrying a strong Italian man and she got you. Number 4. Dave Lagreca is cheap. He self-admittedly suffers from lack of funds. Always looking for free stuff. Free t-shirts, free tickets, free everything. Number 3. He's a hug chaser. Massive hug chaser. Dave Lagreca loves everybody. Hey, Dave, what do you think of this person? Oh, I love them. What do you think of this person? I love them. Fraud. Stop chasing everybody's hug. It's okay to be hated every once in a while. Number 2. He's a massive egomaniac. Always begging the nation to bring Lagreca heads to every AEW show, NXT show, WWE show, any show. Could be Joe's Backyard Wrestling Show. Dave just wants to see the Dave Lagreca head. And number 1 on my top 5 power rankings of who is the real Dave Lagreca, Dave's my boy. Best pro wrestling radio host out there. Boom, done, end of story. I have spoken. And I can't believe I was just so nice to him on video. Oh, dear God, I'm going to run my face into a brick wall. Ugh.
You want to know who the real Dave Lagreca is? It's one word. Fraud. Ric Flair is his favorite wrestler? Come on. Why not just say Hogan? What an obvious choice, Dave. And your favorite football team is the Dallas Cowboys? America's team? You're from New Jersey, Dave. Shadows in New York City. Have you ever been to Dallas? Have you ever even been to Texas? And nobody says Alice Cooper is their favorite artist. For crying out loud. He had like 2 songs. You want to know the real Dave Lagreca? Fraud. That's who he is.
Wow. Thanks for watching. See you next time.